a lot of that back and forth stemming from the fact that the Conservatives have tabled a motion that, if passed, will compel the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, to testify before a committee on foreign election interference. The motion also wants testimony from Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino, the Clerk of the Privy Council, the head of CSIS, the list goes on and on. The Tories want the forum for that testimony to be the House's Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics, and that's a committee conserved by the Tories. A reminder that another committee, this one called the House Affairs and Procedure one, is already studying foreign interference, but that committee is dominated by the Liberals. A vote on the Conservatives' motion is set for tomorrow. Let's bring in the front bench to unpack all of that and the politics of it. Carleen Verheyen is the former Chief of Staff to Jim Carr. She's an Associate Vice President with Summa Strategies. Melanie Paradis is the former Communications Director to Erin O'Toole. She's now the President of Texture Communications. Kathleen Monk is an NDP strategist and principal owner of Monk and Associates. And Le Devoir columnist Emily Nicolas is here tonight as well. Hi, everybody.
Hey there.
Nice
Hi.
to see you. Kathleen, I'll start with you on this one. That's a lot of like what's happening on the Hill, but let's step back for a second. This has been a dominant political issue for the last month. Is this move by the Tories to force this to the House floor, is that something that keeps it in the headlines?
They're trying really, really hard. They're using an opposition day motion to try to bring this to the House. It will come to a vote tomorrow. So far, the NDP is holding their cards pretty close to their chest in terms of how they're going to vote on that. But the reason why the Conservatives have taken this measure to use this motion in the House is because the committee you mentioned, PROC, has been filibustered, right? And they're trying to prevent the staffers from coming to testify. But listen, preventing staffers from testifying is kind of a cross-partisan ploy. In fact, Pierre Poilievre has done it himself. He tried to prevent Nigel Wright. He prevented staffers coming out on the In-N-Out scandal on his own kind of breach of some conservative partisan things that he did when he was minister. He prevented staffers from testifying. So it kind of muddies the waters a little bit. Everyone's done a little bit of this. But whether the question you're really asking is, does this have legs? How will the story continue? Ultimately, I think it comes down to this, is like, will we continue to have this political grandstanding? I think probably the New Democrats will say no. They'll be like, we don't care. We'd rather see things like dental care and people helped in the budget. We don't want to go to an election right now. Can you imagine if an election is we come into an election tomorrow, if somehow the Prime Minister calls us into a confidence vote and just before Biden comes to town, we're going to throw
I mean, I could use like more excitement this week.
This week is pretty busy as it is. So, but I just don't think it's going to happen because I think ultimately the choice for New Democrats is we want to get stuff done for people. We're less into the political grandstanding.
I think that's true to a degree, Melanie, but I would say, for example, that the New Democrats today in question period led with questions about a public inquiry. They have been pretty specific on wanting a public inquiry versus a lot of the other mechanisms out there. Probably have pushed on a confidence vote. I would be shocked if they go further on that, but everybody is still, to a certain degree, at least on the Hill, talking about that. My question is really whether that keeps the issue going.
Well, I don't think that this needs to be a confidence vote, and the Prime Minister's office ultimately, the Liberals get to decide if this is a confidence vote or not. And there's no need for it to be. There's no need for the government to fall on this issue. Just have the committee. Let's have the investigation. I don't understand why people won't go and testify. Katie Telford has testified to committee twice before already during WE and General Vance. The Conservatives have had staff testify as well. Guy Giorno testified. So this is not completely out of the ordinary or unusual. And as you mentioned at the top, there are a lot of other people who this motion would request to come and testify at committee to provide really important evidence about election interference. So that Canadians, since we're not getting the national inquiry that people have been asking for, Canadians would at least have some more clarity, some more information from senior bureaucrats, from elected officials, from key staff, including staff on national campaign teams for all of the main parties. So they're calling for a lot of people to come and share what they know with Canadians at this committee. And I think it's an important motion. It'll be really interesting to see how people vote today, but this does not need to be a confidence vote. And I think if the Liberals make it one, that's really telling you something.
Yeah, Carleen, does your gut tell you one way or the other if they would?
No, they're not going to make this a confidence vote for many of the reasons that have been talked about in the last few minutes, but also just because there are far bigger fish to fry for the Government of Canada right now. I think that at this point, regrettably, and partly due perhaps to how the issue was handled by the Prime Minister in the early weeks of this controversy, but also just by a lot of the partisanship that's been tossed back and forth over the last number of weeks between the Conservatives and the Liberals. We are in a place now where, if you take a step back and you were to check in with Canadians, some level of public trust has sort of been shaken in the stability and the security of our democratic institutions. And so the real question that we ought to be asking ourselves is, what can we do to restore that? What needs to be fixed? How can we make our institutions more robust? I don't think any of those questions are really the intended solutions that are going to come out of this committee hearing if the Conservatives have their way and they get it. I think it will be a lot more just opportunity for gotcha lines. Kathleen mentioned, how this idea of staffers testifying at committees is something that generally any party in government will be opposed to because the base principle is ministerial accountability, of course. It's not the staff who advise you. But what I really hope that will come of all of this eventually is, again, looking at ways to actually strengthen our election systems, whether municipally, federally, provincially. What can we do to ensure that they're more secure? I don't see a lot of that motivation behind the opposition's push right now, but I do hope we'll get there.
Emily, last word to you on this. What do you think comes of this?
I think the summum of irony would be to have a story about China interfering in our election and it resulting in an election that would not have happened if it wasn't for a story about China. And I think that irony needs to not be lost on anyone, and that's why I don't believe at this point that this is, that this will go beyond the level of excitement that we're seeing on the Hill already. The Bloc and the NDP have both been pushing for a public inquiry, and so for them to be dying on the Hill of having a staffer at a parliamentary committee that they say is not enough to go at the bottom of the story, it would also be incoherent given the argument that they've been having instead of just really pushing for that public inquiry to happen and just even not participating, for example, in the consultation on the nomination of David Johnston for that exact reason as well. So it'd be quite incoherent for them to make that their last hill to stand on. And also we need to remember that budget is coming up, Joe Biden is coming up, and of course what's been going on in question period is people trying to make sure that this story stays on top of mind for Canadians. It's working up to a point, but it's not enough, I think, given what else is going on in government to actually make that the number one story like it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago.